Welcome everybody. It's been a couple weeks since we've done this, and we've had some big things afoot for the last month. So I wanted to get everybody together and have a chance to talk about where we're at with the state of the grid or grids. As you know, we're in the process of migrating content from and users from Skye Grid over to USG, and our focus is going to be USG going forward. I want to thank everybody for being open-minded about that move. I know for some of you it was not what you originally intended, and it wasn't what I originally intended either. I kind of felt like investing in Halcyon was a good idea. I, I originally had kind of published an article when Inroads went down that kind of said that what we're ending up with is probably the right direction, that you take the best of the technologies from Halcyon and pull those things over. But I think by running the grid for a couple of months, I got to see firsthand where the weaknesses were within the current code base and what things worked well and what things didn't work well. And also kind of honed in on a feature set that I think will be best for the grid as a whole. So we'll end up with a set of features that everybody wanted. The currency pieces are good. Access to the marketplace at Kitely is good. A lot of things that work or will be made to work in the near future are good. I mean, the event listings and classifieds and searching, all that stuff is definitely achievable. I've got to just be able to devote the time to setting that up. I've been pretty focused on content and the Skye Grid pieces till now, but in the very near future, I should be able to shift that focus, and we'll really get all of the rest of the kinds of things that make a grid fully functional up and running and available for the residents. But anyway, like I said, what we have now is a definition of a feature set that I think is the right set of things to target going forward. So I have been doing some work on the Flocks pieces, the scripting pieces. As I said, I've been mostly focused on OR moves and content, but in the time I get to do coding, that's the major thing I'm working on. Also, upgrading the code base to be more compliant with the current versions of .NET. That's all in part for the same reasons. It's basically to be able to host Flocks and PhysX in a mature framework, and also because it's OpenSim was less stagnant than Halcyon, but it hasn't really received the attention and focus on quality and security and performance that it needed to. And so the NGC project, the team that's there, is focused on those things, and that's where we're trying to bring some of that to bear. So I'm excited, actually, really for the first time in a while, about the state of the coding and where we'll end up. And I'm looking forward to being able to bring that to USG for all the residents to enjoy. So, and now that Skye Grid is largely moved, the content is largely moved, I'll be able to focus on that. So that's the first thing I wanted to really fully address is Skye Grid. I've, at this point, all of the orders for ORs and content that we received have been taken care of. There's still a few issues here and there that are being worked on. But I think that I can safely say that the region content is largely captured at this point, and unless there is a major reason not to do this, my goal at this point is to shut down the rest of the regions on the 28th of this month. There's a couple reasons for that timing. I intend to recycle one of the servers, their main region server, as a region server in USG for orders that we get for regions here. I'm also going to do a little bit of load balancing and spread some things out so that everything is loaded really nicely with the existing regions that we have. And I really will continue to have a full copy of the rest of the grid services. The grid database will actually stay online for a while. I am going to continue to work a little bit on IARs if I can, because I'd like to be able to back up and save content in that way. But I'll also have a full backup of the grid. All of the regions that we're running will be backed up, plus the main database and all the assets and everything else. And I'll retain those backups going forward. So we'll have something to go back to should there ever be a reason or a need to do that. But like I said, that means that on the 28th, Skye Grid will essentially go down, and because there won't be a region to log into, and USG will be our primary focus going forward. If anyone has thoughts about that, certainly I'd like to hear about that in questions when we get to that point, and we can work on things offline if there's other things that need to be done that I've missed. But I think at this point I've got everything accounted for, and I'm anxious to kind of move forward. I really want to get Phlox running in the current Tranquility source code, the code that we're working on now. And I have made some progress on that, so I'm anxious to be able to focus on it and see it to fruition, because I think it'll be a big win. I know there's interest in PhysX, and that's earlier stage than Phlox, but I think there's interest in doing that as well, and that's something that will be coming. And I also would like to do some of the mesh improvements that I made in Halcyon originally and bring those over. So the things like land impact will actually be a meaningful number, and the way mesh works will make more sense. There's some things in OpenSim right now that you don't really want to do with materials in particular, because they spam the asset server if you do it. But in Halcyon, we didn't have that problem, and I'd like to fix that. There's also some things with performance, frame rates, and there's some issues we're aware of with floating point numbers that need to get addressed. So there's a lot of work to do, but it's all well defined at this point. And I think with the current set of features plus those things addressed, we're going to have a really, really nice framework for the grid, and for others to use as well. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be able to focus on that going forward. Partly to say thank you for all the loyalty and for the willingness to do this move, and also because we want to continue to build the community here. We're offering a discount program through the end of September. I think that's what we'd agreed to.
End of August. It'll end August. September 1st.
Yes, sorry.
We've been mucking around with a bunch of dates and such, so it's easy to get confused when we're trying to do a bunch of different things. But yeah, we are going to extend anybody that's referred by a current resident in, if somebody puts on their support ticket, if they want a region that, like somebody from here, like Tanya, or, Wolfie, or, somebody in the grid referred them, then that person will be eligible for the Beta for Life pricing, so long as we receive it by September 1st. And back to you, Mike.
Yep, sorry. So that's obviously the goal of that, is to have more of our friends join us and have a presence on the grid, and also to for that loyalty, extend the pricing that is a little bit better than our standard pricing. I still think the standard prices are quite good, but this will give them a little bit of an incentive to move over now, and it helps build up the community a little bit. I also believe that, and we're still working on details of this, that we will do a similar kind of a promotion, different focus after September 1st, which is partly why I guess I got my dates mixed up. But we'll continue to try and do some things to try and encourage new residents. But that one in particular is important, because if you can refer somebody that you think might want to join us, they'll get the benefit of that pricing until the end of August. I'm going to talk a little bit. We've had some interesting things come up with regard to moving from the content from Skye Grid to USG, mostly because VARs are available in USG that weren't available in SG. A lot of people did what kind of like what a VAR was with 2x2s in SG, and there was one particular difference that turned out to be relevant. It actually kind of tripped up some projects for a little while, and that has to do with any region only has a single set of terrain textures. So no matter what the size of that region is, so in some cases, because people had 2x2s in SG, those were for individual regions, and each region could have its own terrain texture. In the USG case with the VARs, which are nice because they save you some money for the same amount of land space, there's only a single terrain texture. So a couple of things happened. One is people kind of had to put their thinking caps on about how they lay out their regions and come up with an arrangement that allowed them to get the effects they wanted with the single set of terrain textures. There's a couple of people that I would encourage to share what you did in P2P, because I think that there were some cool ideas that people came up with to solve that problem. But we basically were able to resolve most of those kinds of issues pretty handily, and people were still able to take advantage of the Var regions. The other issue, and this is interesting, I don't know if this happens on other grids that use VARs. What I'm finding is that the viewer is kind of not tolerant about anything where there's more than one region on a side. So we had a couple of cases where somebody got a 4x4 and we put two 2x2 regions on one side of them, and that ended up creating some viewer instability. That in that case there weren't more than 8 regions total attached to that 4x4, but it was enough to cause instability, and actually mostly in the 2x2s. I don't know if it was because of the corners or what the actual issue was. I also know there was some code changed in the very latest Firestorm. In some ways, the fix that was made was in line with that, in that they tried to enforce the idea that regions can have different sizes than just 256 by 256, but there can only be one region on an edge. So that caused a little bit of trouble, and we had to do again some rejiggering and moving things around to resolve that, but that's all been done, and I think now we have a better idea of what's possible going forward when people order regions. In most cases, when somebody gets a 4x4, what they usually want anyway, it turns out to be, like space off on their own, where they want to have a big spread out region or area. So that works fine. If you have a VAR that's standalone, there's no issue with any of this kind of thing, and you can do 4x4 just fine. In the other cases, we can make it work. We just have to be a little bit careful about how we fit regions next to each other so that we don't violate that single edge requirement in the viewer. But we learned some things there as well, and I think hopefully have everything all resolved and satisfied. What that does sometimes do is create occasional void spaces along the waterways. You'll have regions that are not really water; they're void. There's no region there, and that's unfortunate. But I think we're trying to avoid that as much as possible. And we did manage to do that with the current kind of layout, but it's possible going forward, if we have a lot of cases like this, that we will create some void space in the map, and we'll have to watch out for that. And related to the map, when we got a couple of regions loaded up, right now when the region starts, the map view gets regenerated. Ballpeen and I have had some conversations about this. For Discovery, he's actually got a very nice system where he defers the map generation to times when the region server is not loaded and it doesn't have an impact. And I haven't had time to put that kind of automation together. It's a great idea. So I put in what's called Warp 3D as the map view, and it's a really nice detailed view of the map. It actually draws prims on the map and things. I'm sure you've seen that they look really nice. Unfortunately, that comes with a cost. There's a fair amount of CPU cost and memory cost when the map generator is running, especially on a region with lots of prims. I've had cases, if I did the map generation on region restart, where a region would be taking up almost an hour to come up because the map was being drawn. And those are cases where people had lots and lots of prims down on the ground. So I've changed the map generation to fall back to the older map view for the time being. This is one of those things that, as time permits, I'm going to revisit this and I'll do the automation that Discovery has in a similar way, and basically we'll switch back over to the Warp 3D module and the nicer maps. But for now, as regions restart, you'll see the older style blocky map temporarily until that gets addressed. So these are all kinds of things that had come up over the last month in the process of moving content from SG over to USG. That's why I'm kind of going through them. Like I said, I think most of these things at this point have been solved, or at least there's a interim solution in place until we can get to something that is more final. But I think we're in a good spot. Everybody, as far as I know, everybody's region content, the ores have all been moved over and loaded. I made some code changes to handle mapping of IDs and was able to handle cases where there's multiple creators or owners of content on a region. Map all those over. Traditional OpenSim has a tendency to do things where if it doesn't know who the user is, it basically just assigns everything to the region owner, which in my opinion is not acceptable. Our code doesn't do that anymore. It actually supports the idea of looking up aliases and leaves things alone if it can't find a local user, which ends up being, I think, a better solution. So most of the content at this point's all been moved over. Like I said, we're planning on shutting things down on the 28th, and our focus then will be USG going forward. I'm excited about it, and I hope you are too. So I have a few other things I want to talk about, but I'm going to take a brief stop here and then ask for questions. See if anybody has any questions about that.
Hello.
Hey, go for it.
I seem to recall in InWorlds, there was a board in resed out, and it showed basically a top-down view of the grid, all the different map squares and stuff. And I don't know if that was done manually or it was automated or something, but I always thought that was pretty cool. I was wondering if we could do something like that in the future.
This was something that was in World?
Yeah, and it just showed all the grids or all the regions from a top-down view.
Huh. I never saw that. We can certainly do something like that on the website. There's a lot of things I'd like to do to make the map accessible from the website, so you can scroll around and see things that way. But that would be an interesting project if somebody wanted to pick it up.
Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm pretty sure it was something, an actual thing. All right, that's it.
Anybody else? Wolfie says it was the events regions, and he or EC did it manually.
Hey, I just had a quick question. I
Mhm.
was wondering which grids are involved in the NGC project.
Um, I really don't. I don't want to speak for other grids specifically. I doubt that anybody that's in that list would mind, but uh,
Okay.
I don't want to speak for them specifically. There's about there's at least 5 that I know of. I know Balpine has spoken. I can safely say that Balpine has spoken to the fact that he's running versions of the code, but I'll actually encourage some of the other people that are to come forward and talk about that, because it would be good to know. But I'm not comfortable actually outing somebody if they don't want that to be the case. So, especially given it really relates to their business.
Okay.
And related to that, actually, you didn't ask this question this time, Sauber, but in the past you had mentioned, we talked about flocks and getting the inworlds functions working. That's actually my first deliverable, is a set of working inworlds functions running on top of the current script engine, and then I'll port the Flux engine underneath that. But that's the approach I'm going to take with the migration: is get the inworlds functions working first.
All right. I think I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So Judy's typing in state of the grid if you're not following the text channel. Yeah, that's a great question. So you can, a region itself has a name, but parcels also can be named. So if you cut parcels out of the overall region, those can be named in any way you want. It's similar to what you would have in SL, where it's much more common there, at least for people to have only a part of an overall region. So yeah, you could do that at the parcel level without a problem. Okay, I can work with you on that. I'm fairly certain you should be able to do that. We'll take a look at it. Wolfie?
Yeah, I was just wondering with the Var regions, the 2x2s and the 4x4s, would you be able to do the same thing that you do with the water regions, using larger size Vars? I was wondering whether it would be a strategy to avoid the gaps, whether it would be a strategy to have a different part of the map that had, say, a line of 2x2 or 4x4 water regions, and then people could put the larger regions around those rather than trying to fit them into the same sort of map area.
Yep.
And the other thing to come off that was, for those people that do like using the water to sail or fly or whatever, there'll be a lot of advantages to having, say, 4x4 water regions for the space. But I don't know whether there's any issues with that, whether there's any reason why those can't easily be Var regions as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, that's actually it worked out such that I was able to resolve all the current issues with 2x2s without a problem. But if we do get interest in people having 4x4 regions that are connected to water, that's exactly how I would do it, is start to build out a section of the map with larger parcels that are, so long as we follow the rule with each edge has a single region attached, we should be fine. So and there might be cases like, water battles or things like that, where you actually want to be in the same region server and make that happen. The crossings are pretty good, and so is as we get some physics things more fine-tuned, even that should be fine. But you might still want to have a larger expanse of water that's for use for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Oh, good.
Hey.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Good. Do you mind if I talk about how I did the variable size region connections?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. And I'm going to point you to, if you look at, by the way, I want to first preface this by saying, Mike and I are very close friends in this, and so we're very friendly, two grids that are very friendly with each other. So I'm going to mention some of the stuff on my grid just so an example, okay?
Yep.
Not trying to steal anybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are some a set of rules that have to be observed to keep the viewer from crashing. It's been that way forever. And the recent changes that were made didn't change those parts, but they exacerbated a few things. Mainly that corner to corner crossings, no matter what size regions or different size regions are next to each other, just simply don't work. In fact, it got much, much worse with the latest changes to the viewer. So that's just one area where they really made things worse, but everything else did improve. You can have two different sized regions next to each other if you observe a few rules, and I'll write it up and then share it with Mike, and we can get the thing get it all straightened out. But if you look at if you go to, just to see it, go to Discovery Grid, and there's in the menu, look up world map. You'll see that I have all the way from 1x1s all the way up to 8x8s, all connected together by water. And that was possible by just following the rules that you have to do, which is you cannot have more than a 1x1s can connect to 2x2s, 2s can go to 4s, 4s can go to 6s, and 6s can go to 8s. And in any combination down that ladder, but never can you skip a size, because there's a rule about how many things can the viewer see within a radius of 1024, no matter what the draw distance is. So it can be made to work. And if you peruse the world map, you'll see, if you look around, you'll see what I had to do to make that happen. So it is possible to have continuous connected waters and make that work. So, and I'll share that so that USG will have the same benefits that I figured out a long time ago.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Also on the physics things, I might mention that there's going to be some tweaks to get things better. Probably the biggest fix that's going to happen is essentially undoing something that the core devs did, which is they massively reduced the precision of floating point arithmetic, thinking that was better, because it was their smaller numbers. Anyway, but the point of it is that massively destroyed a number of things, and one of them has to do with physics, which is that you're limited on the frame rates you can do, because the tiny steps that represents each individual physics frame couldn't be expressed accurately by a single precision floating point number. It also has to do a lot with collisions. That is, whenever two objects hit each other, and you don't think of it this way, but when you're driving a car, your wheels of the car are constantly hitting the ground. And likewise, a train is constantly bouncing back and forth, little tiny micro jumps between the rails. And the switch to single precision damaged collisions enough that things would derail, things would pass through each other. So we're going to fix that. I have that on my item list to fix as a temporary. A couple of temporary fixes like that. I call them transition fixes until we get to PhysX 5. Which I'll say again, I think I said it before, it's about a 6-month project. And I mean a 6-month completely dedicated, only working on that project. So it'll be a little while before we get to it, but we will. It will happen.
Cool. Yeah, the floating point thing was a huge kind of setback, and there's a few things like that have to get fixed in order to make sure the framework is solid for going forward. But I think that stuff can get done, and we'll be in better shape.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Hello again.
Hey, Lex.
I'm gonna do this every time we have a town hall meeting. One of my frustrations being a particle person is that ever since SL came to be back in the 2000s, I guess, early 2000s maybe, or maybe it was 2008, I can't remember, but a long time ago, the default that for the viewer has been 4,000, whatever, like half the max, and the maximum is 8192 for particles, and that's never changed. And it just frustrates me that the viewer people won't increase that, because it causes a lot of problems for people like me having it set that low. And I realize it has to do with people's graphics cards overheating and stuff, but they can reduce the number of particles if they need to, right? But people's GPUs are such now that you could handle quite a few more. So I'm wondering if you guys have the ear of the Firestorm viewer devs, etc., and can maybe push to increase that.
So I thought, I'll have to check. I thought we had made a server change. There's a one place where the server's capping it, but yeah, I mean, we definitely have the ability to talk to server developers. I've been able to have a number of conversations with Beck, who's on the server team. She's the primary person that's responsible for the OpenSim porting of the viewer. So if you could put in a bug ticket that, like a support ticket, and talk about exactly what you're looking for, I will absolutely take it to her and we'll work out what, if anything, is possible. They're going to be, as you might expect, a little bit cautious because of compatibility with SL, because Firestorm's not going to do anything to screw that up, but there might be a way we can work out a solution that doesn't impact SL, that allows us to actually have an improvement.
I guess I want either a higher max for particles or fix the existing bug, which is particle starvation. And nobody's ever fixed that in all the years. Sure.
Yeah, real quick about that. There is something you can do to fix particle starvation. Now, what most people don't know is that once a particle is introduced into the viewer, if object culling, which is a feature you can turn on, is not enabled, the particles just keep eating up space, and so you'll get starvation much earlier than the 4096 or 8192. So this used to be a problem in InWorlds a long time that was partly solved, but it's fully solved, interestingly enough, in OpenSim if object culling is enabled. It means that particle sources outside your draw distance will be culled out, and so that means there'll be the particle slots will be available for any nearby people. So that's I mean, it's not exactly what you want, but it does increase the apparent number of particles that you can have in a local area.
That would help, yeah.
Yeah, it would help. Mike, I think you're right. I thought didn't we fix that in the server?
Yeah, because they were only using, I thought we did too, yes, up to just below 8K.
Right. Okay.
So I'll have to look.
So thanks. We'll have to figure out what that was about, because we may have something may have gotten dropped. The other thing too is we have the 8 meter particles. That definitely is in, because
right.
we got that into core, in fact. So
yep. Yeah. So Lex, if you can do just a support ticket that explains the changes you're looking for, how you think it ideally would work, we'll sit down and go over it, and then if there's viewer things to do, I can approach back.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In case anyone didn't see my comment, I just wanted to note that part of why the particle limit is so low is because, unless I'm recalling this incorrectly, the viewer is doing particles on the CPU rather than the GPU, because most of Second Life's users have historically been running on computers with integrated graphics, so the viewer does a lot more stuff on the CPU than it would do on the GPU.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because it's not necessarily likely that the particle system the GPU supports would match directly what SL actually originally implemented. So,
and I know most modern game engines support millions of particles.
Yeah.
They do it all on the GPU.
Yep, that's a good point. Thank you.
Yep. I'll take my leave.
Anything else? I've got a couple more things I want to touch on real quick. All right, I am going to go ahead and wrap up with a couple more topics. They're more about the community. There's two communities I want to touch on. One is the NGC community, and we've been working on a couple of things. I mentioned a lot of security and stability fixes that are important to get in order to make some of the other things we've been talking about work. We actually have a number of people in that group. There's a couple of lurkers, and there's a smaller group that's actively doing development work. I made some changes in our Discord server recently to distinguish that, so that if you're a real active contributor, there are conversations you can have participate in that other people would not necessarily see if they're not, and that's partly just so that we can stay focused. But the other thing that I think is coming is we're really eventually, and I think eventually is coming soon, going to have to fork away from the original core code in order to do some of the things that we're talking about here. There's some stuff coming up in SL that I think we're going to see sooner rather than later. One is a big one, and it's a change to the materials model to physically based rendering. And what that means is things like mirrors work and reflections that really reflect from the surroundings. And amongst other things, it also impacts how materials are done. There's also some things that are related to scene loading that they're working on, and they're making really quick progress on it. I think it's something that we're going to see soon in the viewers for SL, and those will get carried down into Firestorm as well. There were some discussions amongst the core team about supporting this stuff, and the core team so far has generally taken the approach that they're not interested in it, that they prefer just to stick with the legacy stuff. The problem is, and I've had other discussions about this with the Firestorm team, they literally can't imagine supporting two different, just completely different models in the viewer. In other words, if OpenSim doesn't track what Firestorm is doing for SL, we may lose an OpenSim capable viewer because they just won't be able to maintain the source code, which I totally get given the size of the project and everything else. And Firestorm's primary audience is still SL. So that being the case, there's been some discussion in the NGC team that if Core won't do that project, that maybe we will. So I think where we're ending up with is a fork, and I still want to continue to cultivate relationships with people in Core. We will share code back to Core where it makes sense to do that. If they're not interested in features we have, that's fine. And I think that we may still be able to merge changes from Core into our tree. It's just going to be, rather than a direct code base that follows Core closely, we're going to be two separate code bases that can merge from one thing over to the other. I think that's going to keep our project viable, and it's, like I said, the basis for doing a lot of things like the Flox port. I can tell you for absolute certainty that Core would never take a Flox port into Core for lots of historical reasons. And I'm fairly certain they also would not take PhysX. And I think both of those features are really, really critical. So it sort of leads us to this point anyway. So that's really about the NGC project. Like I said, to me, the benefit to USG of NGC is that there's more than one person looking at it, which, in other words, it's not just me. And I think that that's a real benefit to the grid. I really think that we could end up with something really unique, which to me was what InWorlds managed to do. They really set themselves apart from OpenSim as a whole, and for a long time, it was, SL was the grown up, but InWorlds was really trying to do a unique feature set and provide something that was different with real value. And I think that's what we're going after with the NGC code and in our case USG, but also the other grids that are in the Trusted Grid group that we've been talking about. So anyway, sorry, a small technical digression. I don't want to put anybody to sleep. The last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to ask Callie to help with this because I think this is going to take some brainstorming, and I'm actually encouraging this. But we're coming out of summer and into the fall, and we would like to plan a holiday party sometime in probably winter time frame. We already have the art space region set up for a winter art show. So I think maybe we could accommodate something like that there. But I'd like to include other regions and actually make it grid wide. And I would really love to encourage people to come up with ideas and participate in the event. So rather than just this be something where Callie and I come up with something and we plan it and bring it to you, this is something I would like the grid to embrace, ideally. Kind of a coming home party, if you will. And if there's not interest, I understand that too. But I would really love it if we could do something special for ourselves. So I think we need to have some conversations, but hopefully there can be fireworks involved, and we'll do a number of art-related events. A lot of Callie and I both like the idea of having the grid have an artistic focus. Might actually have a GT show in the same time frame. So who knows? Judy, that's a great idea. I don't want just Callie and I to organize all this, but something like that would be awesome. And I would really love it. I think if enough people get together and step up and help, we can make it really not be a burden. So, but yes, those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about. Basically, let's do something special for ourselves. And I think the holidays are a good time to shoot for it. Yeah, damn. Anyway, that's all I had. I'm going to turn it over to Callie to see if she has anything she wants to add or to help me remember something I might have missed. But I think I would love to see IGA generation happen around this party thing. So because I think we should be able to do something really cool. Callie, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was napping during the tech.
No,
I'm just
that's
kidding.
good. That's good. That's probably good for napping.
I'm kidding. No, I see we actually have or don't have or did have a question. Oh, Tanya. Tanya has a question. So I'm gonna let Tanya take the floor first, and then I will come back.
Okay. Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah. You've got that whole section of the one region that's winterized and everything. There's some really cool things on there too. Yeah, that would be great. And I don't think we have to tie this to a single date like a Christmas party. In fact, I'm trying to avoid that. I like the idea of Winterfest.
Yeah, we're not looking to do a Christmas party.
Right.
We really want to do more of a seasonal thing.
Well, Halloween would be good too. That's cool.
Yep. Halloween's good too. Yep. Yeah, and I'm down for a Winterfest, Tanya. I think that idea is great. I'd love to see a couple of different things. I have lots of ideas, but not enough time. So, I mean, one of the things that I could think about is, Judy, I've never flown in one of your planes. Maybe you could take me on my first inaugural flight or offer winter flight through the winter regions or something like that. I mean, just fun stuff, I mean,
Just don't let her
you
drive. I'll
you
warn you.
don't, no, you
Yeah.
don't want me driving at all. I will regale you all with the story of the helicopter on IW that Harbor had to search like high and low for. I mean, really, no, no, not Cali flying. Me being a passenger, yeah, while somebody else flies. But the only thing I'm good for is dancing. Okay, let's get real here. I'm keeping it 100 with y'all.
we'll,
Yeah.
we'll shoot for that next summer.
No, but I really like the idea. We don't. I think the thing that InWorlds got right was the events kind of thing. Say what you will about all of the pitfalls of there was a lot of bickering about favoritism and all that. We don't have that kind of thing. I think the community is starting to become one that is small enough to not have that, not quite big enough for the large kinds of things, but enough driven by the passion for the virtual space that we could come together and make something special. So I do think that we can kind of work towards that and build something good. And while the tech folks work on the things that are going to give us that trusted grid kind of setup and all the big picture items that are going to propel us into a much bigger community, I think we the people can do things along the way to help nurture and foster that kind of community growth. And yeah, I think a winter theme on scaling it back to the current topic, I think a winter fest would be a great idea. A grid-wide hunt or a region crawl would be great. Judy, you could fly people to winter regions or something like that, or um, we could dance our way to winter regions or stuff like that. So um, I think ideas are great. In fact, I'd be uh, I'd be all for making some kind of a suggestion, something or other. But I want to take things from suggestion phase to creation phase. Yes, that's true, Glider. We can see how fast we can make snowballs melt in your region, right? With lava, you know. But anyway, I think these are all good things, and I think we should generate that excitement and kind of get there because we're already at August.
Right.
Whatever
Time will come
whatever
fast.
we do is going to have to get started pretty quickly.
The idea of a GT show in the winter time frame scares the hell out of me, but I think we have to. I'd like.
Well, Natiri and Lex just passed out somewhere, right?
Yes.
You said I didn't even say it is on you now. This
Yeah.
not on my shoulders this time.
Anyway, the other thing I wanted to touch on is in SG we had the Creators Guild regions for stores, and a number of people took stores there and set up. I know that in this transition, it's been kind of over time, so it hasn't been clear that, hey, these stores are available now, but they are on USG. And in fact, we have two sets of Creators Guild regions. There is one that is closed to the outside only region. Only people that are on Skye Grid can have access to that. You literally do not see the region if it's in the closed one. And then there is one Creators Guild region that's open to the hypergrid that people can come and shop across the hypergrid for content. You need to consider which one makes the most sense for you. I know some people want to sell to the outside, basically to the hypergrid as a whole, or sale is you can give stuff away too if you want. And some people don't. They want to keep it more in our community, amongst our community. So you have a choice. Either one is available, and if you want a space in either of those places, contact Callie or myself, and we can help you out. The other thing it's possible will eventually happen is that other people will want to run malls and stores and things like that, and so I don't know if in the long run it makes sense for us to continue to do the Creators Guild, but right now I think it's an asset. And it also is something that can be used for things that aren't just stores. If you haven't been to the Creators Guild regions in USG, you should pop over. In particular, there is a artist exhibit that takes up a couple of the buildings from an artist by the name of Milo Grigsby that's really quite good. So other things like that can happen in those spaces. It doesn't have to just be about stores, but I just want to make people aware that those are available. The hypergrid versions are accessible to the outside. The plain one is not, and Globits is usable on both of those regions, which leads me to the last topic, which is our currency. Right now, the entire grid is Globits focused. While I'm in the process of shutting SG down, I'm saving all the balances for Skybucks, and I am going to be bringing those over and setting up a local currency like we had in Skye Grid as well. I know there's a number of people that have them, and I'm going to honor them. I'll bring the balances across, and they'll still be usable for services. They won't support cash outs, so it's a grid only currency, but you can spend that money on services on the grid, like your tier and things like that. And I will set up a separate mechanism to buy those when they're set up. If it's configured, it's right now, at least, it's tied to a region. So for instance, a whole region supports either Globits or the grid currency. But eventually I'd like to be able to do some more interesting things and support making that more flexible. So anyway, that's coming as well. And as much as I get forgetful as I get older, I think I actually did cover everything I wanted to cover. So all right, any other questions? Yeah. I don't have enough screen space for that.
I do have something I would like to bring up, and it won't take very long.
Sure.
I do want to make sure that people are aware that on the website, there is a link at the top of every page that goes to the USG calendar. And you can add this calendar to your own calendars if you use Google calendaring. But you can always go to the calendar on the website, and you don't have to have a Google Calendar to see what's posted. So I want to make sure that people know that at this minute, there's so much that we need to get to the point of doing, like having a calendar, events kind of thing where people can create events, on a web interface that we don't have just yet. And so while we're kind of moving things along into that direction, this is what we have. So I do try to remember to post the events in the USG events channel, but I want to make sure that people understand, because I've heard from a few people that they don't know where the USG or Utopia Skye Grid channels are. So in Discord, we've got things organized by category. So there are categories for everything, short of the coffee house, which is kind of on its own. If you have a category collapsed, you will only see a channel if somebody has posted in it. But if you expand the category, you'll see all the channels in that category, whether or not people have posted in them. And for example, the Utopia Skye Grid category has all the channels related to the grid. Now, this Discord server is 90% Utopia Skye Grid related. The other 10% is an inclusion of the Creators Guild, which is a remnant of when Utopia Skye Grid was open. But it's the HG visitor channels exist because we do have merchants on our open Creators Guild region. And so they can talk to folks in those channels there. But anything related to the grid directly will appear under the category labeled literally Utopia Skye Grid. It's actually got a little rainbow in front of it, which correlates with the rainbow icon you would choose if you are a resident on the grid when you join this Discord server. So if it's collapsed, you'll only see a channel if somebody's typed in it. If it's expanded, you'll see all of the channels there. And if for some reason somebody in this chat, this State of the Grid now, doesn't see those channels, get with me after the meeting. Let me review your permission set and make sure that I got everybody over who was in SG and got them in the USG permission set as well. I think that was longer than I anticipated, but that's really all I wanted to bring. So,
all right, one more call for questions, and then I think we're done. All right, not seeing any.
Got it to an hour today.
Yep, not seeing any hands raised. I think we'll call this meeting finished. Thank you, everybody, for your patience.
Remember to post your ideas on the Winterfest channel.
Yes, and I will be sending out notices as I get closer to the 28th. But like I said, my plan is to bring down the SG regions on the 28th and make those resources available for USG. So thank you, everybody.